What's up, everybody? It's Kevin here from Happy Beard Games, and today is a Friday, a Famicom Friday. On today's Famicom Friday, we're playing a scary horror visual novel for the Nintendo Super Famicom that was released only in Japan on the Nintendo Super Famicom and later on the Japanese PlayStation 1. This is a game called Gakkou de atta Kowai Hanashi, which is translated roughly to School Horror Stories. With today's video game, we've got a game that's mainly text-based, but there are multiple choices, multiple paths to take in this choose-your-own-adventure style visual novel from Japan. And it has digitized photographs of real people, real actors, in the backgrounds of the text adventure. So with that, let's jump in with today's video game, Gakkou de atta Kowai Hanashi, for the Japanese region, Super Famicom. Today on Hybrid Games is Famicom Friday. What we're doing here to be able to play this visual novel, which relies heavily on text, is we're using a guide. So there's a guide online from 2016 that is really helpful for this game. It is called the Gakkou de atta Kowai Hanashi Translation Project, which is the translation project for this game. It is seeming like this translation project is incomplete. Since this guide is incomplete looking, we're only going to be able to play through the very first story of the game, which the game has multiple stories for the different characters throughout the game that you can choose from in a choose-your-own-adventure style gameplay. And the first story is known as Shindo Makoto's first story. It's actually called that. And then it's also known as the Mirror at the Old School Building. So a lot of my video is going to be heavily relied on not just the game itself, which we're playing on the Nintendo Super Famicom, using an actual Super Nintendo console, and the actual game cart. It's also going to be relying on this GameFAQs / website fan translation guide that helps me through, as a walkthrough through all the text in the game, school horror stories into English. So we're going to jump in with the game Gakkou de atta Kowai Hanashi, aka School Horror Stories, as it's known in English, though it never got an English translation. Right now on Happy Beard Games' Famicom Friday. So here we go. For our next newspaper, let's put together a special report on the 7 wonders of our high school. And just like that, we, the newspaper club, made the 7 wonders of the school the topic for our next big article. This summer, they're planning on finally tearing down the long-abandoned school building on campus. It is because of this we want to do a report on horror material, and I, the freshman newbie, wound up being selected as the one responsible for it. This text on the opening prologue scrolls by itself, by the way. But I had no idea what sort of scary stories were circulating in the school, so an officer in the club said he would assemble a group of students familiar with these kind of stories in the club room for me. It seems he wanted to attend himself, but he couldn't make it, so now I have to direct this whole thing myself. I had no idea who he was getting together for it. The 7 were set to all meet me in the club room today after school. Personally, I'm not all that good with horror stories. Honestly, I have to say I'm a bit of a coward. Heavy gray clouds blanketed the sky as I made my way across campus. It felt like it could start raining at any moment. The damp wind whipped at my clothes. Why did I have to listen to scary stories in some dimly lit club room on a miserable day like this? I started to think about just turning around and going home. So every time in the guide that it transitions to the next page, the next screen of text, there is these 2 arrow marks, so you can keep up with it as you read along. And yet, the fact that my legs were still moving in the direction of the club room must mean that deep down I was actually hoping I'd get to see something scary. When I opened the clubroom door, 12 eyes simultaneously fell upon me. 6 students were quietly sitting around the large table in the center of the room. It was so silent that I had assumed the room was empty. After the 6 gave me a once-over, their heads turned back down as if focusing on a single speck on the table. There was not a single familiar face in the bunch. Well, this is a big school. There are 7 even people in my own grade I haven't seen yet, so it wasn't anything unusual. Judging by the atmosphere in the room, it's likely like the 6 gathered didn't know each other either. 6? Hino told me he called for 7 people, so that would mean that 1 was still missing. Either way, I took my place at the table. No one spoke a word. Time ticked by in this heavy, awkward silence, even though I knew I should say something. The atmosphere of the room made it difficult to speak up. Eyes still cast down. No one stirred. The 7th person showed no signs of coming. Time only passed in vain. The atmosphere would continue forever unless I said something. Hello everyone. Since you all took time out of your busy schedules to be here today, I was thinking it might be good to go ahead and begin. I decided to try breaking the ice. I heard that 7 people were called for this, so are you that 7th person, or are you the one from the newspaper club who's here to listen to our stories? One of them mumbled quietly, his head still turned down. Only his eyes looked at me. Sheesh, what a gloomy-looking guy. Just one look from him sent a chill down my spine. Yes, I am Sakagami Shuichi from the newspaper club. I was told by Hino to inquire about everyone's stories today. It is nice to meet everyone. Everyone silently nodded their heads in greeting, but after that, no one said a word. How should we go about this? Since you've all been waiting a while now, how about we go ahead and get started? Getting impatient, I asked once more. Sure, with one person agreeing, the rest of them slowly nodded their heads as well. Just what kind of horror stories will these people tell? Was it just me who felt this strangely heavy atmosphere pressing down over my shoulders? The warm, damp air was blowing in from the gaps in the window frame and brushing against my cheek. I couldn't help but feel a strange, unfamiliar apprehension, like something was just waiting to happen, that unknown thing that causes you to feel a sort of indescribable sense of dread. It was here. Why? Why do I have to think about these things? It's getting painful just to breathe. I never felt this way before. To try to break free of my swirling thoughts, I spoke in a loud voice. Alright then, let's begin. Without waiting for the missing 7th person, the 6 students gathered began to tell their school horror stories. And that brings us through the intro and opening prologue to the game School Horror Stories, also known as Gakkou de atta Kowai Hanashi. Here's a little intro animation of kids playing on like a playground at school, and then the shadows turn into demonic monsters, and the title card begins. Once again, it's by Pandora Box and Ben Presto from 1995. So now we're getting to the actual game, or gameplay, even though the intro and the gameplay are very similar. It's just on this part, I believe you can actually progress as you go, so it's not auto playing. So we're scrolling a little bit up higher on the guide, translation guide. The menu guide has its own separate section. Everything's laid out very nicely and very well for this guide. So the next thing is the name select screen after the opening menu. You can also save data on your cart as well on this game, so that's pretty nice and handy too. The opening menu only appears if you have previous save data, which I don't, so maybe the battery's dead on this cart, I don't know. So now we're going to name select. If it's your first time playing or no save files, you'll start at the name select. The main character's default name is Sakagami Shuichi, as we found out in the prologue. He's the main character who gets to hear the stories of the 7 horror stories students from school. He's the main... So Sakagami Shuichi is the player's name who gets to hear the other school horror stories from the other classmates in the club. So now we're going to press enter twice to accept the first and last name and move on to the next screen. However, it doesn't say where enter is on here. I'm just gonna go up and press start twice. I guess start is enter according to the game screen. That kind of looks like a Nintendo DS, but I think it's an old style laptop. Okay, so now we've got 1 is save, 2 is don't save. Selecting 1 will bring you to the save screen. So you only got 2 options here. This basically says, would you like to save on the far right side of text. So we're going to choose 1 to save just in case. We've got our save slots here. We're going to put it on slot 1. And then we got save. So now we have our first save file. Okay, and then we're going to go to 2. Oh, B button is exit the menu and continue. Okay, so you just press B a few times. You should be able to go back to the actual game start. So here's our character here, Sakagami Shuichi. I believe that's who it is. Oh, wait, maybe it's not. Let's see, we've got character selection. This is Shindo Makoto. So these are the students that we're listening to, and we get to choose their story as we freely want to, but we're only going to be able to choose Shindo Makoto because that's the only one that's translated in the guide so far. So we've got Shinjo Makoto, Arai Shoji, we've got Kazama Nozomu, God. We've got Hosoda Tomoharu, we've got Iwashita Akemi, and Fukuzawa Reiko. In the very bottom, we have the select button, which allows you to select it in stereo. So now it's in stereo. It was in mono originally. Some Super Nintendo games actually are starting out in mono. It's kind of cool. Some Super Nintendo games actually have surround sound, which is strange, but cool. We might see that in future games. So we're going to go ahead and select the top and first story / character, which is Shindo Makoto. There's a couple things that you got to look at in the guide at this part of the game. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Shindo by, I guess, pressing A, which will start us into Shindo's first story, The Mirror at the Old School Building. Alright, now it's time for our Japanese phrase of the week on this week's Famicom Friday. Our phrase of the week is not a phrase this time, it's just a word, and that word is Kowai. Kowai means scary in Japanese. Not to be confused with kawaii, which means cute in Japanese. Kowai, K-O-W-A-I, Kowai, means scary in Japanese once again. And it's also part of the title of our game that we're playing today, which is Gakkou de atta, Kowai Hanashi, for the Japanese region Super Famicom. And I hope you enjoy this game so far. We're going to get back into it in just a little bit. Just please remember that our Japanese phrase of the week, word of the week, is Kowai, meaning scary in Japanese. Thanks for watching. Let's jump back into the game. Alright then, I'll be telling the first story. I'm Shindo Makoto, 12th grade, homeroom class D. Now there is one thing that I want to point out. You can actually press A on this mode, not like the prologue, to continue the text whenever you want, which is why there's that down arrow. But I do want to go back up and check out a couple things on the guide, which include the section titled in-game menu. So anytime you want to press start during the gameplay, you can press it and it'll bring you to a 3-option menu. You can't back out of options 2 or 3. So 1 is continue story, which will exit this pause and return you to the game. The 2 button is redo a story, which takes you to each screen where each story you've listened to in the game in order. And you can ask, which story would you like to return to? So you can go back to the beginning if you mess up or something like that, or just want to read it again. You lose your progress if you do that. And then the 3 button, option 3, is the pick a different person to listen to, which will bring you back to the character select menu for that story number. So you can either redo the story, or you can choose another person for their story. So now we're going to go back down to Shindo's first story, The Mirror at the Old School Building is the title of the story. I also want to point out that this guide is kind of interactive, so it has options for the story, and then you can click on the option as a link on the guide, and it'll take you to the next part, because it's basically choose your own adventure. Choose your questions and answers will follow depending on what you do differently. So it has its own kind of different outcomes depending on what you choose. So it's not always going to be the same story every single time, but there is also a recommended guide, or recommended order on this guide. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that page up too on my own, and I'm going to check the guide, which is pick the choices in this order for the recommended route. Yeah, it would be 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1. So I'm going to do that just for this Let's Play video today on Hybrid Games Famicom Friday. We're going to check out this, but I'm going to, every time I go to, after I'm done reading it, and it gives me a choice, which there isn't too many choices, I'm gonna refer to the next page in my tab, which allows me to go through it. So the first one we're gonna choose is option 2, but we're not at that part yet. So I'm gonna reread where we're at in the story, and then we can continue on. So, okay, here we're starting out the story. The story begins with, all right then, I'll be telling the first story. I'm Shindo Makoto, 12th grade, homeroom class D. So, have you all been to the old school building? It's not in use, of course, but I've been once or twice. Even though it's all freaky and run down, just the fact that it's off limits makes it perfect for exploring. The temperature's always cool in there, even during the day, and the floor looks like it's going to give at any moment. It creaks with every step you take. The creaking echoes through the hall, which suddenly you'd swear you'd hear another set of footsteps behind you. So you turn back to look, but no one's there. We've all felt that, right? No? How about you, Sakagami? Have you ever been to the old building? Ever been down gloomy corridors? Now this is where I get to choose either yes is A or no is I haven't. So I'm going to choose, I'm assuming red is the select button. So I'm going to go to 2. Which I'm referring to the guide to get the best ending or recommended ending. So that brings me to this part of the translation guide, which is here on the second page, I believe. You haven't? You've got no guts, huh? Every student in the school at the school has to go there at least once. That place is crawling with spirits, so it's perfect for tests of courage. Alright, I guess I'll walk you through it this time. Of special interest are the stairs to the 3rd floor, located at the end of the long 2nd floor hallway. The temperature drops there, and even in the summer it's chilly. It's like being in a refrigerator. Plus, since the sun doesn't reach there, it's dark even in the daytime, and since people won't be able to tell if anyone's in there, it's the perfect place to skip class. Though it's too cold in the winter. Anyways, there's a large mirror at the landing of those stairs. What you would call a full-length mirror, one large unbroken pane of glass that reflects the whole body. There's a strange rumor surrounding that mirror. Of course, I don't believe it. No, I should say that I didn't believe this rumor until that incident happened. I will tell you the story of that mirror. ... The mirror has been something of a topic of conversation among us for quite a while. You could see... Let me just turn off in my room. Freaky. Okay, back to where I was. Okay, so I'm right here. You could see strange things if you stood in front of it. You couldn't see your reflection in it. These kinds of rumors sprung up. But I didn't believe them. My classmates and stuff would talk about it, but it wasn't something my friends and I paid any attention to. About that, one day, this guy named Yoshioka came up to me saying he had something to talk to me about. Yoshioka was a gloomy-looking fellow. Always seemed isolated from everyone else, so I'd never really spoken to him before. Since he didn't stand out, there was no reason for me to be particularly interested in what he had going on. He was a guy who had a weak presence, like you wouldn't even notice if he was missing or not. That's how Yoshioka was, and yet he said he wanted to talk to me. This might have been the first time he'd started up a conversation with anyone. I had no particular reason not to listen to him, and since he specifically came to me, there was no way I could turn him down, and so I lent him my ear. Yoshioka, hesitant at first, soon began to mumble out his story. Reading a story within a story. What do you think he wanted to talk about? So we're going to refer to the next part, which is you want to choose number 3. I'm going to tell you the options. I didn't tell you the options last time for some reason. So the first one is his girlfriend. This is what he wanted to talk about. His studies is number 2, and number 3 is the mirror in the old building. So let's click on that one. Now we're going to follow the guide once again. That's right. He suddenly began talking about that mirror. He whipped out a suspicious old, worn-out book and showed it to me. Printed in that book was a photo of a mirror. Apparently it was a magic mirror linked with the spirit world. Don't you feel you've seen this mirror somewhere before? This is the same mirror as the one sitting in the stair landing of the old building. Suddenly, spouting something so ridiculous, I couldn't help but laugh. Wasn't that just some old mirror you could find anywhere? The mirror in that book and the mirror on the landing, they were just your average mirror that was sold everywhere. It wasn't like it had any special decorations, plus it was really cheap looking. Nevertheless, this guy Yoshioka spoke with utmost sincerity. I can tell this is without a doubt the same mirror as the one on the landing, and it connects this world with the spirit world. He said. I burst into laughter. I told him to cut it out, and I ignored him. That's only natural, right? But he just flew into a rage. You don't believe me? I know it. That mirror leads to the spirit world. He started trembling as he spoke, and his face turned bright red. I was the one who was surprised, saying there was nothing to be that upset about. I tried to calm him down. Then he told me that we should go see that mirror together. He said he would show me proof that he was telling the truth. Since he was really taking this seriously, I answered, alright, I'll go, and gave him a nod. I figured if I told him I would go, he'd shut up about it. We can't go now. Nothing will happen unless it's 3:33 and 33 seconds at night. Otherwise, the door to the spirit world won't open. He suggested an outrageous thing with a straight face. Of course, I was tired of all this, so I just ignored him, and with that, he didn't come to talk to me anymore. So what do you think happened? 3 days later, Yoshioka suddenly walked up to me. Today is a day with powerful spiritual energy. We'll definitely hit the jackpot if we go today. I'll show you proof. He said all at once. Adding to that, he had a serious expression on his face. At first, I didn't know what he was talking about, so I just stared at him blankly. Then I suddenly realized, could he be talking about that mirror? And he was asking me to sneak into the school at the middle of the night? He's a pretty gutsy guy under that pansy-looking face. I'd never been to the school at midnight or anything. Well, I figured he was just messing with me, so I replied casually, okay, sure, I'll be waiting at the front gate at 3 a.m. He was smiling happily ear to ear. Come to think of it, that might have been the first time I've ever seen him smile. The first and last time. Later that day, the school ended and I went home, and for a while I forgot about that story. The middle of the night came, and just as I was about to go to bed, Yoshioka's face suddenly popped into my mind. When I looked at the clock, it read 2 o'clock a.m. If I was going to go, I still had time to make it. I remembered his face lit up with a smile, and somehow I couldn't fall asleep. But come on, going to school now would be such a pain. Plus, if he didn't show up, I would look like an idiot. Should I go? Should I not go? I made up my mind. In the end, what do you think I chose to do? Either 1 is go to school, or 2 is don't go to the school. So let's check it, which is probably going to be go to school. So we're going to choose 1. Now we got to click on the next page. The school was creepy at night. Right when I was thinking about what I should do if Yoshioka didn't come, he was there in front of the school gate with an expression as vacant as a ghost. He was just standing there. He was holding a flashlight. When he saw me, he brandished his flashlight and approached. It would have been nice if he was smiling, but there was not a hint of one. I think he forgot some of the dot arrows to transition it. Was it from tension? His face was drenched with sweat, and he was looking at me with a blank look on his face. I've been waiting for you. Now we'll be able to see some spirits. And by the way, on this text, you can kind of tell the quotation marks with that line. It's like a line like that, and then a line like that, closing the quotations. That's how you know someone's talking during the text. Yoshioka himself was creepy enough I could have mistaken him for a ghost. It seems the spiritual world manifests itself in different forms. What form will they appear in before us? We won't know until it happens. As he was speaking, he pulled out a slightly dirty hand mirror from the paper bag he was holding. It was a round bathroom mirror, like something women have. He flashed the mirror at me. At 3:33 and 33 seconds at night, you line up a mirror you use with the mirror on the landing. And when the two mirrors are reflected in each other, apparently you can see strange things inside there. It's not just that you can see things, something might come out too. I'm excited. I couldn't see an ounce of excitement on his blank face. The school is crazy scary at night. The new building was already eerie enough, but we had our sights set on the old school building. Do you even know how scary that place is? A haunted house is nothing compared to in there. Now Yoshioka had a surprising amount of guts. He was pretty nervous, but he just walked briskly ahead. He steadily advanced through the pitch-black school with the dim light of a single flashlight. I was just managing to keep up with him. When we entered the old building, Yoshioka was still not the least bit timid. When it's night, you can hear the awful loud sound of your steps on the floorboards. Creak, creak, creak. A sound like nails on the chalkboard surrounded us. You can hear it in the game, too. Could we not hear anything else? Well, that sound somehow just gets trapped in your head. When it's daytime, you don't really notice the stench of old rotten wood either, but when it's night, you can smell it. With every breath, that choking stench fills your throat. We're here. It'll be 3:33 and 33 seconds very soon. Suddenly, Yoshioka's footstep stops and the flashlight shone on the mirror. A mirror to the spirit world. What a joke. This was just a regular old mirror. That's what I convinced myself. I think some of the translation got mixed up a little bit. So I'll just read it and then kind of skip ahead. A mirror to the spirit world, what a joke. This was just a regular mirror, old mirror. That's what I convinced myself. It felt like I would get sucked up into that mirror any moment if I didn't. It's 3:33, so I'm going to line up the mirrors now. Listen up, no matter what happens, you'll be frightened. Saying this, Yoshioka held out the bathroom mirror to the full-length mirror on the landing, which is what the image shows. When he did, what do you think happened? A demon flew out. The face of his corpse appeared. I could hear the moaning. And then nothing happened. Let's check. The second one is the face of his corpse appeared. So we're going to choose the second one. This is where it could get kind of scary, guys. Let's go here. I can see my face, Yoshioka suddenly said. Well, duh, it's a mirror. Obviously, you can see your face in it. Wondering what he was talking about, I was in for a shock. It wasn't just that his face was being reflected in the mirror. No, my face is purple. I read about this in the book. If your face shows when the mirror is purple, that means you will die very soon. And that purple face is the face you'll have when you die. His voice was shaking. Don't be stupid. I looked in the mirror again. That was definitely Yoshioka's face in the mirror. Oh. I actually made a noise. Up until now, I could have sworn that it was just reflecting Yoshioka's normal face. So when did that face in the mirror turn purple? On top of that, it wasn't his normal face either. How should I describe it? Maybe that looked that bloated or a wax model, or like a wax model. Either way, it wasn't his normal looking face. Surprised, I started to run. By all means, I should never have been able to remember the way out of the pitch black building. But somehow I made it through. Only Yoshioka was left inside. When I remembered this, it was like Yoshioka himself was crying out from behind me. Don't leave me here. And yet, I don't think And yet, I didn't think to go back and save Yoshioka. Even if I had thought to, there was no way I was going to go back to that awful place again. But still, I endured my fear and waited for a while at the front school gate. But no matter how long I waited, Yoshioka didn't come out. I thought he might have left through the back gate, so I headed home as well. It was already early morning by the time I got back to my house, so I couldn't get any sleep. With no sleep, I finished breakfast and went to school, and that's when I learned that Yoshioka was dead. I heard that early that morning, a teacher patrolling the grounds had found him in front of the old building. Yoshioka lay dead. I don't know how he made it out of that building, or else who it was that moved Yoshioka's corpse from in front of the mirror to out in front of the building. I know none of this. However, I did hear that a handheld mirror was found tightly grasped in Yoshioka's right hand, a completely shattered hand mirror. The next day, I went to Yoshioka's wake, since I was his classmate. We all went. His death must have been sad, even to those who hardly knew him or weren't good friends with him. The girls were crying and stuff. Then I caught a glimpse of Yoshioka's face in the open casket. At such an improper time, I screamed, but I couldn't help it. Inside the casket, I saw it. It was the same face that was in that mirror. At that moment, though it must have been an illusion, his eyes, only for an instant, flung open. They glared right at me. Why did I not go back to save him? Why did I alone escape? His eyes seemed to hurl such questions at me. Ever since then, I have possessed a strange ability. Perhaps it's a curse from me abandoning Yoshioka to escape, or perhaps I had already become a resident of the spirit world. I can tell who is about to die soon. Even for complete strangers and people on TV, I can tell. When I see a person's about to die, their face looks purple. And then, that person dies. I've got an idea. Shall I take a look at your face? You said your name was Sakagami, right? You want me to tell you what your face looks like to me now? What is it? You scared? So then our options are, I can totally tell you. You want to hear it? We've got, I want you to tell me, or no, I don't want you to tell me. And we're definitely going to go with number 1, which is, I want you to tell me. Click on the next text, which is that right? You want me to tell you? Alright, I'll tell you. Whatever I say, don't get all surprised now. Also, whatever I tell you is fate, so there's no use fighting it. Your face is. Let's not do this. There's no point in telling you. The dead are dead, the living are living. That's just the part that says ing. I don't know why they carried it over to the next page. Whether I say your face is purple or not, your fate won't change. I think it's best to not know your own future. Besides, I don't know if you even believe my story or not. ... So that's the end of my story. Who's going to tell the next one? Continue to second story. So this brings us back to the main menu, which allows us to, once again, save our progress, which I'm not sure if the battery works on this. It didn't have any save data when I started out. And we're going to go to save screen, text on the GameFAQs guide. 1 is save, 2 is don't save. We're going to go to 1, and then you press the A button to save over a slot. And then you press 1 is save. So it should be save data, it should be saved now. And then B is continue. Now, at this point, I've completed the first story, so you can't play it again unless you go to the start menu and hit play again. Now, I kind of want to see more of this game, but I don't know the text translation and I don't know what to choose to get the story to complete itself, because once again, it's choose your own adventure. But I think that if you choose the wrong answer during the choose your own adventures part of this story, this visual novel, it will probably just exit the story right there. So I'm really curious about the rest of this game. If I can find a full translation of the game, or even better, a translation patch for the game, which is what I do for some of my Super Famicom games, and we've done in the past, then I'll come back to this game. But for now, I think we're about done with Gakkou de atta Kowai Hanashi on the Nintendo Super Famicom on today's Hybrid Games Famicom Friday. It was really fun, really interesting story, nice visual novel. I don't play too many visual novels. I tend to skip through the text pretty quickly, so hopefully you could keep up with me on this one, and hopefully you enjoyed my narration as well. I try to do a little bit better than I usually would. And once again, this game, Gakkou de atta Kowai Hanashi, is a really cool game. It's apparently like a cult classic horror in Japan, but I don't think it's too well known here in the States, and I think it's pretty cool. So if you want a game on your Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, with scary stories from school, this is the perfect game for you. It's one of the very few horror games on the Super Famicom. The only one I can think about is Clock Tower, and then some action horror games like Castlevania or Ghosts and Goblins. But if you want something with a real scary story, Clock Tower or this game, Gakkou de atta Kowai Hanashi, is a great game to start with. It just, however, requires knowledge of reading Japanese text, plus either that or having translations of some sort. And the guide on the game facts was very easy to follow. This is the first time I've done it, by the way, and it was very easy to follow and kind of interactive in a way that you're almost like you're playing the game. Well, you are playing the game, but it's almost just as simple as playing the game itself. So I really appreciate that translation pack from Sunny Days, or not pack, but guide on Game Facts. And if I can find a longer one, we'll return to this game on a future Famicom Friday. But for now, that's about it for this game today on Hybrid Games' Famicom Friday. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to stay tuned for more classic gaming goodness right here on Hybrid Games, more Famicom Fridays, and more. Please leave a like, share it with your friends, leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and subscribe today for more classic gaming goodness right here on Hybrid Games. All right, everybody. Bye. So at my work, Super Smash Games Olympia, we got a big lot of Super Famicom games traded in, and I was going through all the games, picking out ones that I may or may not want. I picked out the ones that I wanted, and then I put back the ones for sale that I didn't want, which the majority of them I already have, because I have a lot of Super Famicom games. But as I was going through and cleaning off the games, I noticed this game, which I couldn't tell at first glance if it was a game about school playground or an actual horror game, because it kind of looked off-putting with the title and the art on the Super Famicom game card itself. So I just popped it in our Super Nintendo at work, checked it out, and yes, it is a horror visual novel game. So I was super excited to check this one out. It's very inexpensive. If you're looking for this one online for yourself, I saw it online for like $5, maybe less, for different sales on eBay. So it's very inexpensive. So if you're interested in this game, you can go ahead and pick it up yourself, or, you know, find other ways. It's also on the PlayStation 1. I'm assuming that version's going to cost you more because of just the way horror games are on PlayStation 1. There are also further sequels as well, but the one on PlayStation 1 is expanded upon port of this Super Famicom game.